Good morning, YouTube family. This is Brother Floyd. I'm dropping in to share a very important message that I received this morning. And this message goes out to every woman that has ever been called a Jezebel, whether that has been done to you by a man of God or a woman of God. I'm here to tell you that that should not have happened. So what brought me to this understanding was reflecting on the Gospels and Yeshua's many interactions with the Jezebel spirit. Now I'm going to reflect on several of them. I'm going to try to do them in order, but I might not be able to, but I'll do the best that I can. So the first one that comes to mind is when Jesus is invited to a dinner in his honor at the home of Simon the ruler, and this is the father of Judas Iscariot, the one who eventually would betray him. So while this dinner is going on, it's recorded in several of the Gospels. I'm not exactly sure which ones record the woman, but I'm just going to do the best that I can to recount the story. So while they're sitting at meal, and this is very early in Jesus' ministry, and he's basically recruited a number of disciples, but at this point, I don't think he has yet appointed the 12. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he hasn't. So this dinner is going on. Jesus is teaching. He's doing parables. And then all of a sudden, in comes this woman. Now, this woman is obviously known by the rulers, the Pharisees, the religious people at this dinner. They obviously know who this woman is because they make several comments which refer to her as a prostitute. Now, you'd kind of wonder how all these men of God would know that this woman is a prostitute. But you know that's a theme that happens a couple of other times in the scriptures. One of which I'll be referring to is in the Sanhedrin. So I'll touch on that one in a moment. So she comes in with this oil, these fragrant oils, and obviously they're very expensive. And she breaks them open and she starts to anoint Jesus with these oils. She anoints his feet and she's crying profusely. Tears are literally pouring out of this woman's eyes like water. And so she's with her hair, she's wiping and massaging and cleaning Jesus's feet. And this is a woman who, from the standpoint of every man of God in that room, is a Jezebel. She's a prostitute, she's a harlot. But notice how Jesus treats her. He doesn't stop this woman from loving on his feet. In that moment, Jesus recognizes that this woman is in pain. She's been abused by men, used by men, and probably by a lot of godly men. Perhaps maybe some of the men sitting at that meal. She's a Jezebel. Jesus is a man of God. Does he call her Jezebel? Does he rebuke her for touching him? Does he throw his hands up? Oh my God, don't touch me. He lets this woman love on his feet. Jesus is awesome. He shows us as men of God how to handle a situation. But so getting back to it. So you've got a room full of men of God, and their initial reaction is to judge this woman as unclean. Now, honestly, Jezebels are, for the most part, not born. A woman isn't born a Jezebel. Jezebels are made. Jezebels are made by godly men. Men of God create Jezebels. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. All right, so let's move to the Sanhedrin. Okay, so this woman is surrounded by all these men, and they have stones, and she is about to die. Now, this entire scene is constructed by the religious leaders to draw Jesus into a trap, to not just stone her, but to stone him as well, depending on how he responds to the situation. So, she is, I'm just going to say, she's probably scared for her life. she's crying, and as the story goes, she was drugged in there, caught in the act of adultery, right? So Jesus is standing there. Of all the men in that room who would have a right to say something about the situation, to stand apart, what he does is defend the woman. He gets down and kneels down right alongside the woman, because this woman isn't standing up at this point. This woman is on her knees, and all she knows is she's about to die. So Jesus gets down in the sand on his knees with her, a Jezebel, and begins to write in the sand. Now, we don't know what he wrote in the sand, but whatever it was that he wrote in the sand, it brought conviction on everybody in that room. It silenced the room, quieted her accusers, and as a matter of fact, he cleared the room. And you know what Jesus said? Woman, where are thy accusers? She wasn't condemned. He didn't call her a Jezebel. He didn't make her feel bad about her history. He stood up and he lifted that woman up. And he spoke encouraging words. And what do we learn from that moment? How we treat one another is so important. What we say to people who are caught in a sin is so important. And you don't kick a person when they're down. You're gonna slander someone and call them a Jezebel, publicly or privately. The Lord rebuke you. Who are you? Think about your own history. Just because nobody caught you in the midst of a sin doesn't mean that you're somehow guilt-free. I'm thinking about godly men who go in on women who fall and engage in sexual immorality with women, or with a good woman, or with a woman who's free and who's sexually free and is living her life. But you're a godly man. You're always responsible for that sexual interaction. At no point do you have a legal right to cast blame or slander on anyone. And so I'm thinking about how godly men will engage in a sexual intercourse, and then whether it's a one-night stand or it goes on for a while, how they will then come to their senses and repent. And it's how you exit that woman out of your life that's very telling, and will determine if God is going to give you a wife or not. Believe it or not, that just came to me. How we as godly men treat women determines how long it takes us to have a wife, or whether we will have one at all. Because think about how Jesus treated women. His expectation that we as godly men, would behave the same. So you have this indiscretion, you break your stride, you come off of your abstinence and your celibacy, and maybe it goes on one night, maybe it goes on a while, and then at some point you want to get back on track, and because you lack the courage and the fortitude and the honesty and the humility to exit by taking full responsibility of the situation, you want to kick this woman out in the most violent, abusive, humiliating manner. And you want her to exit like she's somehow garbage and trash, and like you just wiped your feet across her, so you call her a Jezebel. Or you blame her for your fall. You turn around and say, well, it's your fault. You tricked me. You seduced me. You drew me into this bed. But all them weeks and all them months or that year that you was rolling around in them sheets and eating of her flesh and partaking of her fluids, you weren't complaining about that. But at the end of it all, you cast her aside like a used, snotty, dirty rag. Shame on you. Shame on you. Man of God, you are responsible for what happened. Always the man of God is responsible. It's not the devil's fault. It's you. You made that choice because you got to a point where you couldn't hold your will intact. And so you went out and you drew someone in. You spit your game, or you presented yourself as a minister, like you're going to minister to her and help her find Jesus. But so you find yourself increasingly spending more time with her at inappropriate hours, and then all of a sudden an accident happens. It's not an accident. You did that on purpose. You were very strategic in the way that you went about it. And so you just need to be honest. You took advantage of her. And you went in with the initial intention to do that. That's what you did. In the back of your mind, you know it. So don't play games. Don't try to hide behind a facade of righteousness. You did what you did. Now, be honest. Exit that relationship with some character, some nobility. Allow that woman to walk away feeling that from that relationship, from that experience, she gained some insight, she gained some wisdom. It's not like we comfort people in their sin, but hey, how you break that relationship is very important. When you entered in and created that tie, how you break it is important. How you end it is important. Because you may very well inadvertently and accidentally be creating a woman who then turns around and hates men of God and then goes on a mission to destroy men of God. And that is truly a person who has become possessed with a Jezebel spirit, because that's what Jezebels do. They destroy men of God who have anointings. All right. So these are just, all I'm doing here is just basically providing some type of comfort to women who have been used and taken advantage of. And I'm not saying that every woman is guiltless. That wouldn't be true, right? Because there are some that run game, and they have plans and purposes and intentions. But who really knows that? What we can all do is just be responsible for our own actions in situations like that. Personally, I have been celibate since the end of 2015, and that means I haven't slept with a woman, or I haven't slept with anyone. I haven't slept with a woman since. And just recently, I have been abstinent. That means no masturbation, no sexual related material since October of last year. So I'm coming up on 1 year of sobriety, if I could say it that way, of sexual sobriety. And I have learned quite a bit about myself on this journey. And I've had lots of opportunities to reflect on the women that I have experienced intimacy with. And I don't think that anywhere along the way I ever called that woman a Jezebel. And I don't think I at any point ever used religion or God as a way to end a relationship. And I think that's the travesty. That is the wrongness of it. When a man of God uses religion as a reason to end the relationship, and that's just an excuse. What probably happens is that you get your full, your cup gets filled, you get satiated, and so your nutsack gets all expended, and now you're satisfied for a while. So you slide back into your celibacy or your abstinence, but it's not true celibacy, and it's not true abstinence. It's like you eat a good meal, and your stomach is full for a while. Eventually that hunger is going to come back around with. So you're essentially living a lie. You're not really celibate, because your period of satiation could go for a week, it could go for a month, and for some people it could go for a year, but eventually you're going to get hungry again, and you'll go on the hunt, and then here's another woman. And sometimes some men slide right back to the previous one if she's unwise and allows it to happen. So with this part of it, whenever a man of God uses godliness as a reason to end a sexual indiscretion, that is dishonest. That is iniquitous. That is wrong. And that's bringing God into your mess. That's making God culpable. The Lord told me to end this relationship. Come on. Don't pull God into that. Be a man. Just end it. Tell the truth. I don't want to have sex with you anymore. I don't want to be with you anymore. And then deal with the consequences. Don't put God on your side and say, God told me to end it, or I'm going back to God and I can't do this anymore. Don't even bring God into it at all. Just be a man and end the relationship respectfully. Now I'm thinking about my own history, and honestly, I have been with 6 women in my lifetime, and I've been born again since the age of 15. And my first sexual experience, sadly, but maybe not, was at the age of 21. I was 20 years old when I lost my virginity. And I lost my virginity to the woman that I eventually married. I fell into a live-in situation with her, and then we broke up. Then we got back together, and then we got married. And I truly, truly, truly loved this woman, and I truly wanted to be the man that could be her forever. But sadly, it didn't work out. But before we got married, we broke up, and then I would meet another woman, and it would start off as a friendship, and eventually it would evolve into a sexual relationship, and they would last 6 months, maybe to a year. And so that sort of is my pattern. But I never, ever, ever, ever ended a relationship by saying God told me to, or I'm a man of God and I shouldn't be doing this. No, I never did that. And all of the relationships, they ended organically. They just ended the way they ended. And a lot of these women have moved on to very successful lives and married, and I wish them well. And but I've never brought God into the relationship. They probably at some point picked up on the fact that I was a religious person, but I never got into this situation where I was preaching at them or preaching to them and telling them how they should live. I never did that. I never did that, and purposefully. Now, when you are a man of God and you are coming out of that relationship, just come out of it organically, like anybody else with sense. Just end it. Just say, I don't see this as going anywhere, and I don't want to be in the relationship anymore, right? But don't say it's because I'm a man of God, or it's because I'm in the church, or bring God into it. You know what that really does to that woman? It makes her feel like trash. And it's going to make her hate you. And it's going to make her come for you. And then what happens next is then, you'll sit back and then take on the persona of a victim. You'll make yourself a victim when actually you're the perp. You're the culprit. You created this situation. Now you got to deal with the consequences. So when you bring God into it to end the relationship, you should expect that you are going to get eviscerated. They're coming for you. But if you just man up and just tell her the truth, I don't want to be in a relationship anymore, then she can leave with her esteem intact. She can leave with her power intact and not feel trampled on, or something like that. Now, what I want to kind of get to lastly, we talk a lot about the Jezebel spirit, but I want to talk about the Ahab spirit, and we seldom deal with that. Jezebel was married to King Ahab. King Ahab was an apostate. King Ahab was a king in a godly line who turned his back on God, turned and served Satan. And what did King Ahab do? King Ahab went on a mission with his wife Jezebel to destroy the man of God, the men of God. And so it's important to understand that when you are a man of God and you have this repeated pattern of coming off of your celibacy and abstinence and sleeping with women, that's because you have an Ahab spirit. You're an Ahab. You're an undercover Ahab. And that's what Ahabs do. They create a facade, and then behind the scenes, they engage in immorality. And that's pretty much what you do when it's repetitive, when it's chronic, when it's routine. You're just basically living a lie. You're really a man of sin, and you're really an Ahab, and you are just simply pretending to be a man of God. Now that's pretty hard. That's hard. I think that's a hard thing to say. But there's a ring of truth to that. There's a ring of truth to that if you really think about it. An Ahab, what do Ahabs do? Ahabs use women. An Ahab will be married, right? But an Ahab will have extramarital affairs. Ahabs lack indiscretion. Ahabs, here's another thing about the Ahab spirit. An Ahab spirit worships the female spirit. Ahabs submit and are submissive to the Jezebel spirit, but they secretively resent that. Ahabs have issues with their masculinity. What else about an Ahab spirit? Ahabs secretively hate women, and that's their whole shtick. The whole Ahab thing is that they hate women, but they can't live without women, so they may marry women, but then they will use and misabuse, other women, and then Ahabs are sexually immoral, so it's important for us as godly men to self-diagnose. Do we have an Ahab spirit? And how do you know? Well, how do you know if you have the familiar spirit of an Ahab spirit operating in your life? Look back at the line of men in your family, or the women, because if you have in your family a history of men and women who can't stay in monogamous relationships, who engage in chronic sexual immorality, who have sexual addictions, then it's more than likely that you have a familiar spirit, an Ahab spirit, or a Jezebel spirit operating in your life. And a man of God can have a Jezebel spirit operating in him. That's right. Jezebel spirits, they don't just inhabit or possess women, they can inhabit and possess men. And a Jezebel spirit in a man will always be gaming to turn that man into a lover of other men, or a lover of children. The Ahab spirit and the Jezebel spirit, they work together. Think about it. Jezebel and Ahab, Herod and Herodias in the New Testament, they work together. They are conjoined spirits, and whenever you have one, you have the other. And you'll know if an Ahab spirit is operating in a woman's life who also has a Jezebel spirit, because she will have masculine tendencies and masculine traits, because they work together. And when you're going after one, you have to go after the other, because if you bind and restrain the Jezebel spirit and you don't go after the Ahab spirit, one spirit revives the other spirit. And so you're plagued with these two spirits operating in your life. So the whole point of this video was to talk about how we as godly men treat women, and to draw on some instances in the scriptures to sort of give us some guidelines and support on how to treat women who are taken in a fault, who may be dealing or struggling with a Jezebel or Ahab spirit in their life, is by taking us a beat from Jesus. How did he address it? How did he deal with it? Well, loving, encouraging. He set good boundaries, right? He maintained those boundaries, but he treated them with tenderness and kindness, and he never slandered them. And whenever they were being condemned by other religious men, he always stood up for them. And that is a really defining characteristic of a true man of God. A true man of God will stand up for women who are being mistreated. I just remembered one other instance of Jesus dealing with the Jezebel spirit, when he was at the well. And he was sitting there, and this woman comes up and he begins to minister to her. And it's this, as the story goes, we see that she's had many husbands, and the current man that she was with is not her husband. And so we know that we're dealing with a Jezebel spirit. And how does Jesus deal with her? He takes her to a point in the conversation to where he gets her to think about how her life is dry and thirsty, and how all these men that she's been with have failed to satisfy the deep yearning in her soul. And that's what he's sort of alluding to. You, all these men have never been able to satisfy you, have never been able to quench that thirst, have never been able to fill you up. You have this hole that you've been putting men into, who have been condemning you, putting you down, slandering you. But Jesus himself, who is talking, who is the water of life, is saying, I am a man who can provide you with something that will fill you and take away your thirst. And, you know, in those few moments, you can imagine that she's probably thinking, here's my next husband. Here's number 6, right? Because, I mean, that's her pattern. So she's probably thinking, here's number 6, and I finally found my man. And Jesus, always knowing people's thoughts, he redirects her to the well. And she's like, well, you know, some history about the well, and then there's some small talk about the well. And then finally, she has an epiphany. She has a revelation. And then she says, sir, please give me this water that will take away my thirst so that I will never be dry again. And then Jesus introduces her to himself. And her life is forever, ever changed. It's forever changed. And that's what men of God do for Jezebels. Or, I'm sorry, I'm just speaking figuratively. That's what a true man of God does when encountering a Jezebel spirit. When you as a man of God maintain your sobriety, maintain your boundaries, while at the same time defending this woman, protecting this woman, helping her solve her problems, while restraining and refraining from allowing her to express her love and affection for you carnally, you elevate that love in her, that affection and respect and admiration for you to a spiritual level, and you bring her to Jesus. And you may be the only person facilitating this elevation and this transition to bringing her to Jesus. You, a man of God, if a woman who is wrestling with a Jezebel spirit comes into your life, they're being drawn to you so that you can bring them to Jesus. Sorry. They're being drawn to you so that you can bring them to Jesus. Oh my goodness. Think about that. You are being given a powerful gift and an awesome opportunity to show someone who has historically not been loved. True love. Just checking the timer. So here you are. Let the love of Jesus flow through your heart, not through your penis, not through your lips, but let it flow through your heart, and let her pour out her pain. Let her deliver herself from these predicaments by sharing with you the challenges that she has, and be the solution. Be the one who supports her and finding the true bread of life and drinking from that well that never runs dry, so that she walks, so that she can enter into the kingdom of God and become the woman of God that the Lord sees in her. So many opportunities. So many women have been hurt, abused, mistreated by men of God, and have left them with roots of bitterness and hatred, not just toward that man, but toward the Lord. And in these days, the Lord is wanting to change this. The Lord is looking for a generation of godly men who operate with love around loose women, who can keep yourself, who can maintain your sobriety, who can stay restrained and disciplined, and minister the word, help them solve problems, bring them to Jesus. And sometimes, single man of God, single godly man, you might not know that you might be ministering to your future wife, who may be Once she's delivered, a powerful woman of God, filled with the Spirit of God, who can then love on you in ways that you can never imagine, who can give you the kind of satisfaction in the bed and in your heart and in your walk with God that you've only dreamt of. See, a lot of people look at women who have a Jezebel spirit and they just toss them women away. That's wrong. Every woman who wrestles with a Jezebel spirit is a woman who on the other side can become a mighty woman of God, an anointed woman of God who has balance. She can be both free spiritually and be both free sexually. So I just wanted to just drop in and share these intimate thoughts that are on my heart with regard to the whole topic of how we as godly men and women treat women that we deem to have a Jezebel spirit. We must always keep in mind that we may ourselves have an Ahab spirit. Hey, share your thoughts. Please like, please subscribe, please share. Have a great day.